I actually didn't get diagnosed until I was released, though. So
Huh.
I was struggling with addiction. I was incarcerated, and then I was released, and then I got officially diagnosed. So it wasn't until after I was kind of done dealing with the justice system. When you're brought in to be put in jail, the only question they really ask you about mental health is, are you gonna unalive yourself? Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
only thing. They want to know if you have suicidal thoughts or tendencies. Other than that, like I reached out for help while I was in jail and I didn't get anyone taking me seriously, and so it wasn't until I got
Oh.
out that I finally got to meet with a professional. The problem with schizophrenia is even though I had firsthand experience of schizophrenia with my mom and I knew what it looked like, I knew what the symptoms looked like, schizophrenia causes such a high level of delusion that I couldn't put together, I couldn't figure out in my brain that it was the similar issues or similar symptoms. And so even with all the knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
education I had about schizophrenia, which was more than most people, I still wasn't able to figure it out. When I say that I was like reaching out for help, it literally was just because I was recognizing patterns of like, hey, most people aren't in and out of jail. Or like, hey, most people don't have to use drugs just to get through the day. And so I just started like recognizing little things like that, and finally I reached out, and I don't even think I expected to get a diagnosis. People always ask me what medication I'm on because I'm doing really well now, and they're like, oh, I want to know what works for you. And I try to remind people that everyone has different brain chemistry.
Of
So
course, of
um,
course.
yeah, the medication my mom was on was some of the first medication I tried, but I had a lot of side effects on it, and I
Mm.
had a lot of issues with being able to communicate effectively, and so we ended up trying different medication for me. And at one point, I want to say I was on three or four different antipsychotics at different dosages,
Mm.
and I got to a point now where I was able to reduce that. I'm just on a monthly injection.
Deal about an 8-year journey from being incarcerated and to getting diagnosed to where you are now, where you're public speaking and you're on this amazing podcast. Like
Yeah,
8 years is a long time to constant discipline. Like a lot of people can't do that.
that's one of
They,
the things I always get is people will be like, they'll see how well I'm doing and they're like, "Oh man, that's great for you. That must have been so like they don't see what happened in between, you know?
mm-hmm.
There's no videos, there's no content of the years I struggled with addiction or the time that I invested rebuilding my life, finding a job, getting to work, going back to school. Because so many people that do become like mental health advocates or content creators talking about mental health and mental illness, their lives become Instagram filtered, and
Yeah.
like I feel like a lot of people put an image of like things are so well, oh, I got everything figured out now. And I'm like, yes, my life is great now in comparison to where it was, but that doesn't mean everything's perfect all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I think to not show that is not only like dishonest to my audience, but it doesn't help people grow in their own journey and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that they can have setbacks.
Why do you think men don't show emotion? Do you think it's like a society thing, or do you think it's kind of like the manly aspect to it? Like, what's your opinion on it?
I think, it's probably a little bit of both nurture and nature, it's probably a lot about how our society is set up, the culture we live in America, where like, we are supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be providers. My grandparents were both like that. Both of my grandpas were, don't cry, be very strong. No one wants to see you like go through things. And so it's very like, yeah, suck it up and deal with it is I feel like how men are raised, especially like depending on where you grew up, like Midwest, down south. I know it's like a little more like if you're in a big city, maybe it's a little bit better, but in like
Mm-hmm.
rural areas like I grew up in,
I can imagine like even the early 2000s, 90s, 80s, how did people find about anything? Like, can't imagine a world without internet, you know?
oh man, yeah, I think about that a lot actually, and I'm like, I don't know how people were functioning before the internet.
I think one thing is like bliss. It's like ignorance and bliss. Like you didn't know what was happening around the world. You didn't know what was happening down your block. So like you didn't care about anything, which is nice in a lot of ways. But like I think it definitely helps a lot in the smaller communities. So like rare diseases, disabilities, that can't go out much.
I'm a huge advocate for peer support groups. In-person peer support groups probably saved my life early on.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to talk to other people with severe mental illness and addiction and understand that I wasn't alone. That was crucial for me early on. But then realizing that I could do the same thing on a bigger scale online that's what led to everything I have today. So schizophrenia and VR is a big conversation right now,
Mm-hmm.
because technology does help me be able to differentiate between hallucinations and delusions. It's something that I definitely think could be really helpful for people with psychosis and schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to, obviously, it's all in theory, right? Like there's no doctor proving that VR can help people with schizophrenia. Just the way that there's really not a lot of studies about the coping mechanisms I use either. What happens with my phone? The reason I use my phone is my brain can't process the hallucination also onto my phone, which is why it works as a coping mechanism. So something to do with the separation with the technology allows me to realize that the person isn't there. I'm thinking that VR will have the same results,
That's
and that's why
crazy
I
to
want
hear,
to.
though.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think that VR could, in the long run, be really effective for people with schizophrenia and psychosis.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, Two Minds, One Joe Suits. I'm Joe Suits, and I'll be giving you my to Kody, aka the Schizophrenic Hippie. He is diagnosed with undifferentiated schizophrenic, meaning he has been diagnosed with schizophrenic but cannot be classified into a subtype. So let's say there is a button, and if you press the button, your diseases would go away, but a random person had to die. Would you press the button?
Oh man. Probably not. It's like it's tough to live with, but I've been really fortunate to make the best out of it. Yeah, I don't think I would. I mean, if I could get rid of it, I definitely would, but not at the cost of someone else.
Okay, I see you. I respect your opinion. Respect your opinion. So it's interesting to hear everyone's different point of view on this subject. I've been trying to ask that question for every guest. I think it's a good know where their head is at, just stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I respect your opinion. Okay. So I have here you were diagnosed at 21. Correct me if I'm wrong, but were you incarcerated? And then while you were incarcerated, you were finally diagnosed with schizophrenia?
Yeah, so I actually, because of my schizophrenia, I fell into addiction, and with that, it led to me being incarcerated. I actually didn't get diagnosed until I was released, though. So
Huh.
I was struggling with addiction, I was incarcerated, and then I was released, and then I got officially diagnosed. So it wasn't until after I was kind of done dealing with the justice system.
Oh my God, that must have been really hard for you personally.
Yeah, it's definitely the toughest part of my journey looking back, but it was also where I realized how much need there was for not just mental health advocacy, but criminal justice reform advocacy, and then making sure there's resources out there for people struggling with addiction as well, because a lot of those people are also people struggling with severe mental illness.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I never been incarcerated, so I don't know, but it is something that they would look into you mentally. If they knew something was wrong, or they just didn't care, or like they were you hiding it and they just didn't know,
Yeah, at the time I didn't have the diagnosis, and so like yeah, it wasn't a factor in my sentencing. And then when you're brought in to be put in jail, the only question they really ask you about mental health is, are you gonna unalive yourself? Like that's the
mm-hmm.
only thing they want to know, if you have suicidal thoughts or tendencies. Other than that, like I reached out for help while I was in jail, and I didn't get anyone taking me seriously. And so it wasn't until I got
Uh,
out that I finally got to meet with a professional.
so are you saying that would a silver lining be that since you were be in jail, you had like time, I guess, to think or be away from bad habits that you were able to like, hey, there's something actually wrong with me. Let me like try to like help myself here. Like, how did that whole journey start?
it was it was more so that I just didn't have the distractions I had on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was using like drugs as a way to distract and cope, but I also had like, there was so much I could do if I needed to try to distract myself. I could try to stay busy and do stuff. You don't really have a lot that you can do when you're incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
So, it became pretty prevalent to me really quickly once I was in that there was something wrong with me. I didn't know that it was schizophrenia at the time because, I was delusional. I didn't really have an insight to what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
but it was something that I started just identifying that, hey, I'm not like everyone else. There's definitely something different going on with me. And so I tried reaching out for help while I was still in, but it wasn't until, like a year later that I finally got out, got help, and was able to get my formal diagnosis before medication.
Round of applause for you for trying to get yourself better because a lot of people will just go back to the way things were before and just continue the vicious cycle. But good on you for breaking out of that cycle.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, recidivism rates for people with mental illness and addiction are incredibly high. And so a lot of people end up, going back in after they get released. And I was really lucky. I had good support team. I had friends and family who helped me, and I had a ton of resources that I think some people don't get. So
No, I can't imagine just yeah, like I never watching a video of how a person that deals with schizophrenia like goes through a daily life and just and crazy to I guess what's cool but it's not cool that you're able to actually you can actually like relive some of what they go through. Where like you put headphones on and you listen to people with different voices, like you can actually simulate what it feels like. So I was just like, like when I was doing research on you, I was just like, like I like each guest I do always like to be a deep dive and stuff. So like, like hey, I watched the video and you even had a video too, and like this is how it sounds like. I was like amazed of how you were able to just I think like the big thing is just survive. Like how are you able to deal with this, and then also in the midst of your worst times, you're able to think there is something wrong with me, and like let's go get professional help. Because like I can understand people going to drugs and stuff. Like it's really I don't know what's the right word for it, but like I guess strength is the big thing, and maybe smartness too that you realize there was something actually wrong and like actually get help because I think the biggest thing not being educated enough because you didn't know about it. I'm assuming, right? It was just hey, there's something wrong. Like I have to go somewhere and see if this can be fixed.
yeah, so I did know a little bit about schizophrenia. Part of my journey is that I actually was raised by a mother with schizoaffective disorder,
Oh,
which is
okay.
which is a combination of schizophrenia and a mood disorder like bipolar. So I was actually a caregiver for my mom throughout high school before I ever
Ah,
had symptoms. And it was when I went off to college that I had my psychotic break and started having symptoms. The problem with schizophrenia is even though I had firsthand experience of schizophrenia with my mom and I knew what it looked like, I knew what the symptoms looked like, schizophrenia causes such a high level of delusion that I couldn't put together, I couldn't figure out in my brain that it was the similar issues or similar symptoms. And so even with all the knowledge and
mhm.
education I had about schizophrenia, which was more than most people, I still wasn't able to figure it out. And when I started seeking a diagnosis, it still wasn't for schizophrenia. I knew something was wrong, but at the time I was too delusional, and I didn't know that that's what it was until I got the diagnosis and they started giving me medication.
Well, so I saw a video. Well, now you're on medicine and you're much more active in the community. But you made a video like you were, I think, on a speaking tour or something, and like you were just saying like you were having a bad flu day and you just needed to be in your hotel room and stuff. But
Yep.
when you're off the medicine and like in the process of getting diagnosed, are there days where you're like feeling better and then you go, okay, okay, so I'm having a good day, so like I might go and try to seek out this problem because I can kind of relate to myself to like people that need to see therapy. Sometimes you see therapy 6 months ago, but when they're like very good, they don't seek therapy. They don't seek therapy when it's bad. So did you have like a good day where you were like, you know what, I'm gonna take advantage of this day, try to get diagnosed, or try. I don't want to have another shitty day to deal with.
Yeah, it was for me, schizophrenia is tough because I was delusional. I thought that I was doing a lot better than I was. So in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, things are fine. Things are going well." In reality, it was like my life was falling apart. I had to drop out of college. I lost my job. I was in the direction of losing the relationships in my life with friends and family, and I didn't see any of that because I was, not doing well, and I was also struggling with addiction. So it was very hard for me to see that things were not good. So like most people have mental clarity to be like, "Oh man, things are bad. I'm struggling. I need help." I didn't really have that. When I say that I was like reaching out for help, it literally was just because I was recognizing patterns of like, hey, most people aren't in and out of jail. Or like, hey, most people don't have to use drugs just to get through the day. And so I just started like recognizing little things like that, and finally I reached out, and I don't even think I expected to get a diagnosis. Everyone in my life, like my wife and my mom, were talking about how concerned they were when I first went into the doctor's office. I think I actually believed that the doctor was going to tell me that I was fine and that everyone around me was overreacting and that I didn't have any illness. So it was kind of the opposite of that. I just, I really didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I kind of thought there was something wrong with everyone else. And so it's, with the good days and bad days, it was so hard to tell, what was good and what was bad because I was completely delusional at the time.
I totally understand the situation. It's also good that they actually diagnosed you with something. Good. You hear a lot in the rare disease community or mental health. They'll just say like you're fine, like your blood results came back normal. Like just drink more water, get some more sleep, less stress.
Yeah.
You're good to go. So it's great that there's a success story that you actually got diagnosed with something and you were able to get diagnosed, but also look for ways to help with that specific diagnosis to be a more productive part of society.
Yeah. I mean, that's another place where I was really lucky because of my mom's diagnosis. My diagnosis and treatment went pretty quickly. A lot of people get misdiagnosed or don't get diagnosed until it's like really, really bad. I was fortunate because of my mom's diagnosis and there being a genetic component to schizophrenia. It's not obviously like 100%, but if you have a parent with schizophrenia, it does increase your chances of developing it. And so with having that, they were able to figure out that, that's what I had and get me a diagnosis quicker and get me medication and get me through treatment quicker too. So it's largely because of her struggle through misdiagnosis and treatment that I was able to get in so quickly.
Since your mom had the same as you, do you guys have the same regimen of medicine or is it totally different?
Yeah, totally different. So
Mm-hmm.
even though it's my mom and we're similar in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know people always ask me what medication I'm on because I'm doing really well now, and they're like, "Oh, I want to know what works for you." And I try to remind people that everyone has different brain chemistry.
Of
So
course, of
um,
course.
yeah, the medication my mom was on was some of the first medication I tried, but I had a lot of side effects on it, and I
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of issues with being able to communicate effectively, and so we ended up trying different medication for me. And at one point, I want to say I was on 3 or 4 different antipsychotics at different dosages,
Hmm.
and I got to a point now where I was able to reduce that. I'm just on a monthly injection, and so I
Oh,
don't have to
that's awesome.
take daily oral medication, and it's been awesome. So
Yeah, that what fucking sucks about the community that like everyone had to like figure this shit out for themselves. Like
yeah.
we, unless if we have like a similar diagnosis or even the same diagnosis, it's almost like we can't help each other because like, oh, this helped me, but like it cannot help you, and it's like we're not helping each other. Like we can't help each other. That's what makes it so frustrating in this space.
Yeah, 100%. I get, like I said, that's one of the most common questions I get is people will see how well I'm doing and they'll be like, "Well, what medication do you take?" Like maybe my brother or son or whoever with schizophrenia
Hmm.
should take the same medication. And that's why I don't like say specifics of medication.
Yeah.
I tell people I kind of tell people now that I'm on the long-acting injection, but I still don't say brand or anything like that because I think when people see it working for someone else, they assume, oh, that's the fix all, you know? Whatever this
Hmm.
person's doing is going to work for everybody. And I'm like, no, not if I did the same medication my mom was on forever, I would be miserable, you know? So it's like it's definitely something where it's challenging because it's like I know we all want to help and find ways for people in our communities to function better and live better lives, but when it comes to medication, it's like such a nuanced thing and it really needs to be a one-on-one conversation with your, provider.
So yeah. Like so you mentioned that you said you were on like 4 different medications and then now you're on a shot. Do you
Yep.
also think that since you're better since you're able to I guess control your schizophrenia more, you're able to be in a better mindset and also physically that you're able to be more, productive, maybe eat better, less prone to like self-destructive habits, maybe better people in your life. Do you think that also contributes to you having to use less medicine too?
Yeah, I think stability is always going to be comfortability too. So like I'm not, back then it was like everything in my life was an issue because I had the legal issues, I was in and out of jail, I had financial issues and more stress makes more symptoms. So part of my success with treatment and medication has also been as time goes on, my life is more comfortable too, especially now as like a content creator and, as a speaker. I get to do a lot of things. I get to travel a lot, but I also get to be, it's like I get to pay to be more comfortable in my everyday life. I have a nicer place to live. I don't have to worry as much about like when I was first going through my diagnosis, I lived in such a terrible part of town. And like that itself, every little thing like that really adds up stress
Mm-hmm.
wise. And my life just every day gets a little bit easier. And so it definitely makes it more possible for me to live a functional life without constant symptoms. And like I do still have symptoms occasionally, but it's a fraction of what it was when I started my journey. And so that makes a huge difference just having that comfortability and stability in my life too.
Well, I do want to add an asterisk to the people listening that they did not, I mean, I don't personally know, but this is not something that happened overnight. This is a very slow build-up process that took you how long? How long have you, how old are you right now?
Right now I'm 29, so yeah,
Okay.
it's
So it
been
took you about an 8-year journey from being incarcerated and to getting diagnosed to where you are now, where you're public speaking and you're on this amazing podcast. Like
yeah.
8 years is a long time to constant discipline. Like a lot of people can't do that.
That's one
If,
of the things I always get is people will be like, they'll see how well I'm doing and they're like, "Oh man, that's great for you. That must have been so like they don't see what happened in between, you know?
mm-hmm,
There's no videos, there's no content of the years I struggled with addiction or the time that I invested rebuilding my life, finding a job, getting to work, going back to school, starting, my social media and like putting all the work into that. So,
mm-hmm,
I love that people get to see how fulfilling my life is now, but
mm-hmm.
I think people forget how it started and the work I had to put in to get here too.
Do you ever rewatch your first video you ever made and just cringe how terrible it is?
Uh, it's yeah, my very first ones, yes, but I think I deleted my very first TikToks.
No, you have to
Uh,
keep it up for so you can look back.
well, so for me, it was like I downloaded TikTok. I made a couple videos doing what like everyone was doing. Like back then, the lip syncs were like the main thing.
Okay.
So like I was lip syncing movie quotes and stuff like that. And it
Mm,
wasn't until I had been posting for like 2, maybe 3 weeks that I did my first schizophrenic story time, which is where my social media kind of blew up. And I went from like the first schizophrenic story time I did, I think I had 300 followers and I woke up with 10,000.
oh
And
my God.
so since then I've deleted most of the videos before my first schizophrenic story
Mm,
time. I think a couple of them are still up, but it's not many. It's not all of them for sure.
no, you gotta find them and just laugh it off or just, yeah, I don't know. It's just, for me, I think it's always good to just know where you come from too. Just like a small reminder of it. Like you can both think of it, but it's just nice to see, I guess, the shitty side of it too, I guess you can do. Like before all, I don't know, just, it's just nice to see progress along the way. Especially, like if you go to my first episode with my podcast, so now it's like a night and day difference, better camera, microphone, just more confidence. Like it's amazing to see the progress. And people, yeah, like people think like, oh, he's good. He just had luck or something. Nah, you put in so much work for 8 years, and it didn't even end today. Like you're gonna keep, like I'm sure you're gonna run into some terrible shit in the future, and it's gonna keep, like it's not an always uphill like journey. It's gonna be some downhill too, and I think you're pretty authentic with your audience that you will show that to people and just be like, hey, like, sure, life was great a week ago, but like now my life is shit, and that everyday living hashtag everyday life.
Yep. I think I think that's just as important in my journey though, because so many people that do become like mental health advocates or content creators talking about mental health and mental illness, their lives become Instagram filtered and
Yeah.
like I feel like a lot of people put an image of like things are so well, oh, I got everything figured out now. And I'm like, yes, my life is great now in comparison to where it was, but that doesn't mean everything's perfect all the
Hmm.
time. And I think to not show that is not only like dishonest to my audience, but it doesn't help people grow in their own journey and
Hmm.
recognize that they can have setbacks and that that's normal and like growth is not linear, journeys are not straightforward. And so for me, I think it's just as important that I post about the struggles I'm having as well as the things that are going really well.
I mean, I think another big thing that it's hard to say if it's against us or for us, but that we're both men too, and there are very, very few men in the mental health space at all being as authentic and vulnerable as we are. It's just so hard to find. Like I've been doing this for 2 years, and like even if I do see guys, sometimes I'll be like, hey, like come on my podcast, and be like, no, I'm okay. I'm just like, we need you. Like you're important to the community too. Just from the guy thing, and I think there's too many women in the mental health space that we need some guys to like have their own perspective and their own ways of dealing with things because men and women we are different. Like society kind of are grouping us together, but I feel like we're not. Though I feel like we think differently and we have different approaches to things, and I think it's good to get a male perspective too.
Yeah, I'm glad to see in the last year or so like more of a push for men's mental health, but it's definitely a small amount of what it should be. It's a struggle to get guys to open up about this stuff, even in my own like circle, my own friends, family, and people I do content with. It's really hard to get guys talking about it. And so it's something, I'm happy to find other people doing it like you and like other content creators that are working at it
Mhm.
because it's not the majority of people who are willing to have these conversations, and it is tough, and I think that's why some
Well,
guys aren't
well, what do
willing to
you
do
think?
it.
Why do you think men are? Uh, why do you think men don't show emotion? Do you think it's like a society thing, or do you think it's kind of like the manly aspect to it? Like, what's your opinion on it?
I think, it's probably a little bit of both nurture and nature, It's probably a lot about how our society is set up, the culture we live in America, where like, we are supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be providers. My grandparents were both like that. Both of my grandpas were, don't cry, be very strong. No one wants to see you like go through things, and so it's very like, yes, suck it up and deal with it. Is I feel like how men are raised, especially like depending on where you grew up, like Midwest, down south. I know it's like a little more like if you're in a big city, maybe it's a little bit better, but in like
Hmm.
rural areas like I grew up in, yeah, you're supposed to be, strong. You're supposed to be, and so it's hard to find that balance of like I can show that I'm a strong person and also that I'm vulnerable because of mental illness and mental health issues. And I think that's a struggle for some guys to even like think about that. Like they might have a vulnerability, they might not be like 100% perfect. And so I definitely think that's a societal thing that leads men to believe they can't talk about it. And I mean, that's why advocacy and mental health awareness is so important, especially if you're talking about men's mental health. It's pretty easy to look at statistics and realize that men are more likely to commit suicide. It's like, it's all the information is kind of out there, and it's prevalent, but we're still not addressing it like we need to be.
I agree with you. I think it's a society thing. I mean, like when I first started my journey, and I can comment of you, it's hard to be open. It kind of like you feel like I don't know, you feel like there's like a lid on you almost. Like you want, like you kind of know how you feel, but you just don't want to like say anything. So you just like keep it inside. And then at one point
Yeah,
it kind of just explodes and hope, and then like, I mean, I guess I think it also depends how whoever you tell reacts to it. So like if you tell, let's say you tell like a woman like your deepest secret and she rejects you, you kind of go, okay, so like, the next, and then she walks away, and then you're gonna be like, okay, so the next girl I'm not gonna say anything because, like from experience, like the one girl left, so I'm not gonna do it again. I'm just gonna keep it to myself. So I think it's just I think kind of a luck thing where you just need to be surrounded by people that under, not really understand you, but just want to stay there with you through the good and bad, not just, oh, this man is being vulnerable and like weak. Like I don't want to be with him. I want to be with a man. Like so, I'm just gonna walk away,
yeah,
and it's like it's it's difficult out there. Like I'm supportive of men being open, but like at the same time, you have to be a little cautious too, because I do know it makes you feel better, but might ruin relationships that you don't want it to lose, and it's kind of like what I don't know how like navigate those waters for a man. 'Cause like you said, like in a rural area down south, it's not the same at all. So it's like I don't know. It's hard to make a good. I can only do what I can, but like I can't say my advice would be good for everybody, depending on
yeah,
your situation.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's I was really like I was raised by a single mom, and I met my wife at a pretty young age. So like I've been really like I it's been awesome for me. I know I have a lot of support that I think a lot of guys don't have. My
Hmm.
mom kind of raised me to be more sensitive and more willing to be open about what was going on, and so I was lucky there. But then also I met my wife in high school, and she's been just incredibly supportive through all of my, issues, and she's been with me through my diagnosis and my addiction and my incarceration. So it's like I've had really amazing people in my life that I think it's made being vulnerable a lot easier,
Hmm.
because I know that the people in my life like my mom and my wife aren't going anywhere, and so it's like that, like you said, that makes it harder if you are constantly trying to keep the people around you happy, and you're trying to make sure that you can disappoint, quote, disappoint people around you. And so I think that's part of the reason I've been able to open up so much about my own story and share some of that really hard stuff, knowing that especially online, you're gonna get hate about it. But it's like, yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah.
okay if people. It's okay to me if people want to leave hate comments or are upset with me online because I know that that's more about them than it is about me.
Mhm.
I'm really comfortable with who I am, and I have so much support in my day to day life that makes it
Mhm.
like super easy to talk about men's mental health or my own diagnosis. So,
Yeah, like going to, like when I started like this whole social media journey, I kind of like knew I was gonna get hate stuff anyway. I kind of like already like embraced that before I even made one video. And like,
hmm
to me, I always kind of like when I release a video, I kind of know what reaction I'm gonna get, whether positive or negative. But also, I like to roast myself, so like I roast myself first, and I kind of make myself feel better. So when someone actually says something bad to me, I'm just like okay with it. I'm like cool, like whatever. Like I'm secure with myself. I know who I am as a person. I do know that sometimes my opinion won't be as greatly accepted with a niche of people, and that's okay too. We're totally everyone kind of living their own lives. There are different groups and such. Like I'm definitely not gonna cater to the audience that wear like suits and work on Wall Street. Like I'm gonna go for a
yeah.
whole different crowd, and that's totally okay. And that's the beauty of the internet. You can kind of you create your niche to people, and you give a big hug to them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think also part of building an audience is, I mean, in my case specifically, I've started finding people that, as I continue to share my story, I find more like-minded people that, all that
Mm-hmm.
does is make a bigger community for me. It makes it easier to share my story. I get a lot more support. And I think that's what a lot of content creators are seeing now is like we have these platforms that allow us to see one, there are people out there struggling with similar things, and two,
Mm-hmm.
we can build our own online community that, in the 80s, 90s even, people couldn't imagine of having people all over the world that could identify with them and that could, help motivate them. And so I think that's another thing where I recognize how lucky I am to live in a day and age where, the internet's accessible and I can talk to anyone
Mm-hmm.
all over the world and I can share about my story, and it's like a giant online peer support group.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Like you can literally be whatever you want, however you want. I mean, for for good and bad. Like there's some shitty people out there, and they find like other shitty people to be shitty with. I'm just like, how do you like find these people? Like sometimes I'm trying to find like my niche, and I can't find them. And then the people, I don't know, like they have these weird fetishes, for example, and they like find each other. I'm just like. One, the internet is beautiful, but at the same time, like, how the hell are you like finding these people? Like, I'm like trying to find like my group of people, but like, I can't. But like, these people are finding these weird niche fetishes, and it's like, huh? Like, what? Like, am
Yeah.
I doing the internet wrong here? What?
I mean, the internet's just kind of like that. I feel like there's no great way, great way to find it.
And then like with the internet now, but like, I couldn't imagine like in the even the early 2000s, 90s, 80s, how did people find about anything? Like, can't imagine a world without internet.
Oh man, yeah. I think about that a lot actually, and I'm like, I don't know how people were functioning before the internet.
I think one thing is like bliss is like ignorance and bliss. Like, you didn't know what was happening around the world. You didn't know what was happening down your block. So like you didn't care about anything, which is nice in a lot of ways. But like I think it definitely helps a lot in the smaller communities. So like rare diseases, disabilities. That can't go out much. Could be any smaller group. Like you can have like the LGBTQ community that really risen up because they were able to find each other. Like before they had this weird like sometimes they have like this different kind of advertising in newspaper, like tricky way to like attract people. Like they have this huge, unique way of talking to each other.
Yeah.
Something with the lights or like I don't know, but like I just don't know how they were able to like live in such, and now it's such a beautiful time to be alive too. I mean, there's still a lot of hate too, but it's just great to see communities together. Like, holy
Yeah,
shit.
100%. Well, and I think that's one of the, people all day, especially, boomers and whatnot, they want to talk about how bad the internet is. I'm like, don't get me wrong. There are parts of the internet that I do avoid. But I think what the internet has done is allowed people to communicate ideas all over the world and be able to talk about like illnesses we didn't understand and be able to connect with people that have struggled with similar things. And I'm a huge advocate for peer support groups. In-person peer support groups probably saved my life early on.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to talk to other people with severe mental illness and addiction and understand that I wasn't alone, that was crucial for me early on. But then realizing that I could do the same thing on a bigger scale online was, I mean, that's what led to everything I have today. So as much as Congress and all the old people in the world want to sit and talk about how bad it is for kids, I'm like, if I don't know that I would be where I am today without access to the internet and knowing that there are people out there who had similar issues, and not just as a patient but also because I was a caregiver for so long too, knowing that there were people out there struggling and feeling bad about not being able to care for their loved ones. That was so important for me.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure if you take the internet away from the boomers, they would fight to get it back the next day because I think they would love it. Like, I'm sure they have an Amazon package with their name on it somewhere in the country. It's so,
Yeah.
it made life so much easier. It gives us jobs too. Like, I don't know what I'd be doing. I guess I'd be in accounting if I didn't have the internet because what else is there to do? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a recovered addict and, a felon, so I'd probably be in a factory somewhere.
Yeah, so let's talk technology. My second love is technology. So you have an article written on how to cope with schizophrenia, and what I found interesting that you actually can use your camera on your phone, or you use your health camera to show that the hallucinations aren't real, and you have a video showing off your Wayfarer glasses. But now, since the Apple Vision Pro has came out, what are your thoughts on the Apple Vision Pro?
I I am trying to get in contact with someone at Apple because schizophrenia and VR is a big conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because technology does help me be able to differentiate between hallucinations and delusions. It's something that I definitely think could be really helpful for people with psychosis and schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to, obviously, it's all in theory, right? Like there's no doctor proving that VR can help people with schizophrenia. Just the way that there's really not a lot of studies about the coping mechanisms I use either.
Mm-hmm.
So when I use my phone to, record hallucinations and I can see that they're not there, that's something that like some people with schizophrenia are using, but it's not well documented. It's not communicated a lot. It's something that we as a community have kind of figured out that we can use. And unfortunately, it doesn't work for everyone, depending on their level of delusion and depending on, if they're on
Well,
medication
what's
or
cool is
not.
that you can do it like it's not like a drug that you take. Like you can just take your phone out and put out. Like it's something you can prove to yourself right away. Like you don't have to get this special device and all that. It's like something you can do right at home.
Yeah, exactly. And like that is going to always be like more effective than like something like VR in the long run. I do think there will be applications for virtual reality for people with psychosis and schizophrenia, because I think the technology will be enough of a separation for people that might be having hallucinations, that they might be able to use it to differentiate, or if they think they're having symptoms, they might be able to wear it just to make sure that, the person is or isn't there. So I think there will be an effective place for VR in the future. I don't know that it's something that's going to be anytime soon. I don't know that the technology will be implemented in a way that could be effective for people with psychosis, but I could see it being something helpful in the future.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's two. I think there's augmented reality and there's virtual reality. So I think we should separate the two. The virtual reality is when you put the goggles on and you enter a different world. So does that change anything for you at all, or you still have the same hallucination just within the virtual reality?
So this is why I want to try out the product. Is I don't know that I would even have visual hallucinations if I was in VR, because what happens with my phone, the reason I use my phone is my brain can't process the hallucination also onto my phone, which is why it works as a coping mechanism. So something to do with the separation with the technology allows me to realize that the person isn't there. I'm thinking that VR will have the same results,
That's
and that's why
crazy
I
to
want
hear,
to.
though.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think that VR could, in the long run, be really effective for people with schizophrenia and psychosis.
I mean, that's crazy to hear that you're able to like crack your brain really. Just
Yeah, yep. Yeah, there's and there has been like studies of phenomenons like that too, with so there's people with phantom limb syndrome have used techniques like this, where they they look at either a mirror, or they look at a phone or something, and they're able to like kind of better recognize, like, hey, it's not there, I don't feel pain there, it's all, it's all psychological. And so there is areas where they've been doing more studies on how technology and how coping mechanisms like that might work for different psychological disorders.
that's kind of crazy just to hear you saying that your brain just kind of turns off, I guess is the best term, when there's a camera in front, and it's just fascinating to me how the brain is working or not working at that point.
Yeah. Well, and so like I'll still be having hallucinations. Like it'll still be, if I'm having a visual hallucination, I still see it in front of me. It doesn't go away, but by not seeing it on my phone, I can start to have like more clarity, and I can
Mm-hmm.
tell myself like, "Hey, this person isn't really there." I can actually like start to like convince myself basically that that person is a hallucination, and that makes it easier for me to cope with it in the moment. It doesn't actually get rid of the hallucinations, like they're still there, but it just helps me realize that they're not real, and that just makes it, it's just trying to differentiate
Mm-hmm.
between hallucination and reality.
Yeah, I just feel like we're talking at this point that we don't know. But I feel like when you wear like the Apple Vision Pro, it's so on your like it's blocking the outside view basically. So I feel like will your brain kind of clicks that this is your new reality, I guess. Like when you look at stuff, that it'll still give you the same symptoms that you weren't. I feel like when you put your like the Wayfarer glasses on, you can kind of see through the glasses, but you can look outside the frame and kind of know that kind of two different worlds. But if you're putting the glasses on and covers your whole vision, will that not help you? That's what I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what that's what I've been thinking too, and why I want to try it out so much. My thought process is the reason that I still have hallucinations is because my phone doesn't take up my entire vision. It's just a
Yeah.
small portion I can look at to be sure. But I think with that technology, like if it can't transfer through onto the VR set, it might allow me to just be able to. I'll probably still have auditory hallucinations, but
Mm-hmm.
it should be able to help me identify visual hallucinations much easier.
So the next interview you're gonna do, you're gonna be wearing Apple Vision Pros.
I hope so. It's one of those things where I'm really trying to reach out to someone with Apple to do, like a test run with it, or a small collaboration, because I think this could have a lot of benefits for people.
Yeah.
But I also, it's expensive.
I wonder if, I
And I
mean, you have a great community, so I wonder if the community would go, if you create a GoFundMe and like, I'm sure they would give you money for it.
I have thought about that. I think that is something I would look into, but I really want to try to get Apple. So, they got so much money. If I would much
Uh,
rather
you're,
put in the
it's
work.
pennies for them.
Yeah, exactly. So I would much rather try to put in the work and try to get Apple
Hmm.
to send it to me. If that doesn't work out, then I might, reach out to my community. But I would really love to see this be something that I could, have them. I think if they look at it from a way of like other ways it could be used, like, because if it can actually be used to help people with schizophrenia, that opens up a window where VR, could even maybe be used like medically for people in
Hmm.
facilities. It could even be used like I think there's a lot of opportunities there if it's something that can be effective. And
Um,
so that's why I'm continuing to like look into it more too.
well, I'm a huge Apple fanboy, so I'm like 90% sure that Apple will not do anything to help you. Like
Yeah.
they don't work with any company in terms of like partnership and stuff like that. I do know like for reviews and stuff, they'll send like units for people to review, but they take them back,
Yep.
and then also you can use the watches for example. They don't send the watches out to anyone. They just get the videos and stuff. What they so like you might have to go to a different I don't know, just like a mental health channel or something they could approach that. I know like with the Apple Watches, they get it through their insurance. So I feel like you might have to go like a company route versus the Apple
Yeah.
directly and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something else I can definitely look into.
I'm just be interested to see what your reaction is, or not even yourself, but a lot of other schizophrenia people to see how if it's changing them because it's so fascinating that just having a visual cue can like what word do you do? Do you say it fixes, it distracts you, it cures you? It's not definitely not a cure, but like, how do you approach it?
I think it just the main thing is it's like a form of reality checking. So it
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily fix it. It doesn't make the hallucinations go away all the time, but it does allow me to understand what's real and what's not, which makes it easier for me to navigate, day to
Hmm.
day. It makes it easier for me to be like, okay, I'm for sure having hallucinations. So if I'm not home, I need to get to a safe space. If I am home, I need to try to find distractions. I need to work
Hmm.
on something that can, help me cope in the moment. So, yeah, so I think that's something that, it's definitely depends on what's going on, but it's something that is more going to work as I guess distraction is a good, yeah, word for what it's kind of doing in my brain.
Well, the other, I guess, concern, just thinking about it, will there be a concern about addiction in the way where, like, I don't know how it works for you, so assuming, like, so you take medicine and if you don't take it for a day, you become, like, I'm sure you become, like, irritable and shaky if you don't have it and it become worse. But, like, if you, let's say the Apple Vision Pro does work, will it become too much of a reliance to use it? Because like, oh, like oh, I'm feeling bad, I'm gonna put them on, but like when you take them off, like you you want to feel better, so you put them on, and then before you know it, you're 24/7. You're sleeping with it at night, you're in the shower with it. Like, would there be an addiction, I guess, to it that could possibly happen?
Well, it for sure wouldn't be an addiction because if it worked effectively, the way I would look at it is like that'd be like calling my antipsychotics an addiction, like they
Mm-hmm.
work, so I take them. It would be more of trying to figure out ways to use it periodically. So
Mm-hmm.
once again, this would be only if it's super effective. I think that one of the things that you would probably start to see is it would probably be initially used for people that are more in my area of like recovery where they do have some clarity already, they
Mm-hmm.
have medication and treatment, and it's more used for specific episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would only like probably put it on if and when I start to think I'm having hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
Just the same way as like I don't have my phone out all the time, I pull it
Sure.
out occasionally just to
Mm-hmm.
do a reality check. But I think it would be more used like that. And it probably wouldn't be as effective for people that are just starting out in recovery or
Mm-hmm.
don't have medication or treatment because at that level of delusion, it's probably not going to be something they can trust as a coping mechanism anyways, because of, paranoid thoughts and delusional thoughts.
Yeah,
So,
that was gonna be my next question for you. But could it also be a stepping stone of maybe recovery? So like they have like a break from it for a little bit, they're able to
Yeah.
maybe go like, hey, maybe I guess it could be two ways. One could be like, hey, wait, this could be a new way I could live if I did work hard, like an example kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
also, could it be like that? It could be like, this is what your life could be, but you gotta put a lot of work. Could that work too?
Yeah, I think one of the cool ideas with VR would be to see if it helps people have like moments of clarity. Because if someone could identify that what they're having is in fact a hallucination, it might help them have like clarity and realize that something's wrong. So that might even get people to reach out for help sooner and, you know, be able to put in the work of going through treatment, medication, everything like that. So,
No, it's an exciting future for not just for you, but also to seeing like the blind community too. I feel like
yeah.
it could help a lot in the blind community in some aspect. Maybe not this generation, not this first version, but maybe the second or third. It could be specifically used to help blind people become less blind. Okay,
Yeah.
like one example could be so there I have night vision blindness, so I just have difficulty seeing at night. But like if I could put glasses on that would like light up. I mean I guess they have like the the military green light and such. But like if I could put the glasses on and see at night, like that's a game changer right there. Like there's so much
Yeah.
possibilities out there. It's just a technology kind of there, I guess, but it's not usable. Like I do know, like I'm a huge fanboy, so I looked into it. But like the glasses are really heavy, so obviously people are not gonna want to wear them for a long time. The battery sucks. It's like 2 3 hours. That sucks a lot. Like, you don't want to carry that and a battery and another battery and that, so that sucks too. But
Yeah.
the future is exciting though with the disability community. It technology is helping the regular people, but the side effects of helping the disabled community is so cool to see.
Yeah, I think I mean I think that we as like people with disabilities and like people with you know things that we're trying to educate people about, I think there's a lot of seen potential in technology where they're not pursuing it quite yet. Like
Hmm.
that's been the thing where I'm like, man, I see a lot of potential in VR and like other forms of technology that could be helping, and I don't think we're at a place where those are going to be readily available and
Hmm.
accessible to people with like severe mental illness or disabilities. But you know, the hope is one day it'll get to that point and we can make sure that people have, you know, if these are effective, make sure that people have access to them as coping mechanisms.
I mean, you could also look into Division Pro as a money opportunity because, like, think of all the views you would get if you're the first schizophrenic person to get. Like, even if it works or doesn't, just the interest of it alone would garner a lot of views. Like, it would be just amazing to see how you react to it. Okay, change the whole
Yeah,
technology aspect.
absolutely.
It's just so cool. Like, it's just, like I understand it, but like at the same time, it almost like breaks my brain of how it works too. It's like,
Yeah, yep, same.
so before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say, promote any words of wisdom, the winning lottery numbers? Well, Mike, it's all yours.
I would just, you know, say I always try to remind people that if you are someone struggling with schizophrenia or you know someone, don't take it as a death sentence. Your life isn't over with enough, you know, help, medication, treatment, access to the right resources. Anyone can live a full and functional life. So,
Yep, so great work, Kody. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Thank you, Kody, for giving me your time and expertise. And if you want to follow Kody, all the his links would be in the description below, so you don't have to copy and paste on the screen. So see everyone next time. Bye.